everyone, welcome to All Things Iceland, the place to get the inside scoop on Icelandic nature, history, culture, and language as experienced by an expat. My name is Jules and we have a lovely guest today. It's my husband, Gunnar. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all again.
And we are here to talk about our experience of speaking in Icelandic to each other for the majority of the time. I'd love to say it was every day, all day, but I'd say it was like 95% or more of the month of March in which we spoke Icelandic to each other. And I feel like the reason, at least for this video, is it being helpful is that a lot of the people see the end result of learning a difficult language like Icelandic instead of learning about the process of the language and the trials and tribulations, the failures, the triumphs. And I'm not going to necessarily do a deep dive into my life regarding Icelandic, but this will at least give you a glimpse into what we're doing in order to help me to learn and for our relationship when it comes to Icelandic. Because when we met and got together, English is what we spoke, and it's so easy for us to go back into speaking English or just switch to English whenever I need to express myself or Gunnar needs to express something that I haven't learned specifically in Icelandic yet. So in essence, that's just a peek into our life that way and to demystify the process of learning a little bit. I mean, this is, like I said, it's a little sneak peek. In this video, we will go into that. And just as a side note that might be helpful is that we did this experiment last summer. So I'm gonna be referencing that as well as we talk about our experience together and give you some insight. And hopefully this is helpful to anybody who has a partner in which you're learning their language or a friend or anyone else, you know, and just some thoughts. So feel free to let me know in the comments if you're learning Icelandic or any other language and how that's been going for you. So we're gonna kick it off with some questions. And the first one being, for Gunnar, and then I'll answer it, is when we started this process, meaning I said to you I would like to do it again since we did it last July, and that was pretty challenging to do it for a month. Were there any things, any feelings that you had about it or any concerns that came up?
Yes. So I got a little bit nervous because last time there was moments where I wanted to express things feelings-wise, that it was hard to do so, and I was afraid that if something difficult would come up that it would be frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same way. So it was last July when I said to Gunnar that I'd like to do this experiment, because he's always been very helpful in allowing me the space to say, like, you know, if you want to do this, I will of course support you and do it with you, but not trying to push me to be in an uncomfortable space. Now, some people have their own ideas about what is considered to be, you know, the right thing regarding their partner. I'm not trying to judge people's relationships, but for us, giving each other the space that we need has been an important part of our relationship and having a safe space to go to. And I already am, you know, naturally wanting to achieve things and sometimes be uncomfortable. Icelandic has been another challenge altogether, for sure. But for me, I definitely had this same concern. And my biggest thing too was I feeling ready for this? Because last July, it was just like literally diving into the deep end of the pool, not knowing how to swim, even though of course I've been learning Icelandic, but there was something very frightening about not having the safety net of English in essence, even though technically it's there, but the whole rule was we don't speak in English unless it was like an emergency. For me, it was like, okay, well, I went to Ísafjörður last summer, and so I know that it's possible, but yeah, I just didn't know how much would come out in terms of what I'd learned, how much recall would be there. And I think too, I have to mention that a lot of people think that because I did this video where I spoke in Icelandic throughout the whole video that I go around all day, every day speaking only in Icelandic. A lot of the things that I do are in English, so it is easy for me. But like Gunnar and I, you know, before this experiment, we're talking in Icelandic about our days, but sometimes we switch. So yeah, okay. So there's that concern about the frustration that can potentially come. Once we got into it though, was there anything that surprised you? Like, was it as difficult as you were potentially concerned about, or was it different than that? Like, how was it feeling to you?
It was easier than the previous time. It was more advanced. It was less. There were fewer times where we had like hiccups, and
Yeah.
I didn't notice you understanding something, and where I got like, "Ooh, I wish I could say this in English." So fewer moments like that. It was only really towards the end of the month where it became tempting to kind of start cheating.
Yeah.
But there was also some more emotional processing events and talks that we were coming up. And I would guess it was like 99% plus
Yeah.
we took in Icelandic.
Yeah. It was a lot. Meaning, like, a lot of the time that we were speaking, I think I just was very conservative with the 95% because I was just I was hoping that, like, I never had to use English, even though I knew that wouldn't be the case. And there was nothing wrong with it. It was just more of if an emergency happened. Like, for instance, you had, one time where you needed to tell me something and it was like, can I say this in English? Because I just want to make sure there's no confusion about this specific thing because it's really important that you understand what's happening. And I was like, yeah, okay, and that of course was always a possibility. And yeah, for me, similarly, I felt that I was much better than I was expecting at letting it like roll off my tongue about the things that I wanted to say. However, I did notice that I think what it does is, for me, it shows the gaps in my knowledge or my understanding about certain words, because there would be times if I didn't understand, I'd say to Gunnar, like, hvernig segir maður something á íslensku? Like, how do you say this thing? So you say that in Icelandic, but you say the word in English á íslensku, like in Icelandic. And then he would help me with that. Or if I didn't know the word, I would just say, like, how I kind of think, and he would catch on, which last summer there was kind of less understanding of when I was not sure about something. And I feel like this time around you understood, or you caught it, like, oh yeah, she's not really sure what to say here, so I'll just say what the word in Icelandic, I'll just correct you. Like, maybe you felt more comfortable doing it this time as well, because I've had my moments where it's been hard. Like, we've had a transition of him correcting me, because being in a relationship or any time where you're equals, right? It could be so hard when all of a sudden you're just unequal in one particular situation that is now dominating your life, such as speaking in this language. And that's how I kind of felt in the past at times. I felt like a child and that I was not equal in this with him. So it was hard to express myself and, get frustrated and stuff. So, okay, it's interesting to hear. And were there any things that did challenge you this time around?
Not in its entirety. It was a very successful experience. Only towards the end, and if there was a moment of frustration, then I'm used to responding like in English, but it needed. I guess we gave each other just automatically more space. Like, I think we were better prepared emotionally for this too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That was a huge step, because our relationship, in my opinion, has been very successful based off of this emotional balance that the both of us have. It's like a little dance, that when I notice that something is up, he can, adjust, and similarly, like, we just kind of realize we have these feelings about each other. But when it comes to the language learning part, there's frustrations coming from me that don't necessarily have to do with our relationship. It has to do with just me being frustrated and not being able to say this one thing, and I'm trying to think of it. But yeah, I think I've matured in the process, because I was forced to do it also in another environment outside of us, that made it that, like, you correcting me or whatever else didn't feel as weird as it did before. There was less stress about it, and it was kind of like, yeah, okay. I mean, that's what it is to grow, right? I mean, maybe there was, some transformation in both of us that has been positive, thankfully. But that's been a lot of trial and error. It has not been like, all of a sudden we're just totally fine. Like, we went from sometimes doing one day where we speak Icelandic to a week, and then it was a month, and then trying another month, and of course days and stuff like that in between. But my biggest hurdle has always been feeling so self-conscious about speaking, and that's why I often am, you know, wanting to do these experiments to just like break out of it. And yeah, okay.
There's obviously more fluency in that, and less hiccups in your speech pattern. About more advanced topics too, like daily descriptions of our events have been like basic to low intermediary, I would guess, but now I would say intermediary level is, you know, it felt like that.
Yeah, cool.
That's good.
Thank you. And where do you think I can improve? Because that is, and I get this to sound like a kind of like, it's not my teacher in the same sense, like I have a private teacher, but it is interesting to kind of hear from your perspective what would be helpful for me maybe to work on.
I have a sense that you're working on things that are important to your development already, so that I'd just like to see you continue doing what you have been doing.
Okay.
And maybe take another month in a shorter amount of time this time around.
Instead of spreading out the months, yeah.
Yeah. So like take a week here, and then maybe in 3 months take a whole month again, you know, something like that. So that we see if there's as much continued development.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I believe what is the biggest hurdle for me is more vocabulary and just the expression of myself, because it's often that I'm searching for a word. And I think, like I mentioned, well, I didn't mention it, but Claudia mentioned in her video that I interviewed her, Claudia Ashani Wilson, who's a human rights lawyer here, and she came over from Jamaica, and she had a book where she would like write down the words that she was learning. And I think for me, having maybe just a better list, or just creating a list really of words of certain things I want to use to express myself would be helpful, because I'm often searching for them, and I don't think they're usually that different. It's not like they're always changing up. It's just more of whether or not I recall what those words are, because maybe I'm not using them as often. And I've noticed that reading in Icelandic has made a huge difference for me too, because there are things you just pick up almost naturally from reading, because if you understand the context, of course, I mean, that's a really important part, but reading, like, you know, and advancing in reading has helped me to form sentences better, or at least pick up on words that might be muddled together in the language naturally, because people are so used to saying certain things and I can misinterpret what they might mean. Last but not least is the plan going forward. What do you think would be a good push for the both of us?
In regards to learning Icelandic?
No, in regards to us speaking Icelandic more together, because it's not that you're learning it, it's just me. And so...
maybe give a month in between.
Okay.
At least, just so that we find that we're still in balance when we're speaking also English freely.
Yeah.
And then see, because I'm not afraid of it now, like I was before, so
Yeah.
I don't mind doing it again.
Okay, great. This is our first time going over our feelings about this experimental month of speaking Icelandic. And I did that on purpose because I really wanted us to be able to just let it out and let, you know, whatever feelings that may have been there as we were going through this just surface. And what's good about that is we were both in a good space while we were doing this. So I didn't think that, like, you know, there'd be anger or frustration coming out of that. Otherwise I would not be doing this video. But also the first time around, I did a video just that I put on Patreon. I shared with the All Things Iceland Patreon community about how I was feeling, because it was a very intense experience. And as Gunnar had mentioned, we both said, like, you know, going into this next one is like, you almost have a bit of heightened feelings around it. But it's so nice for it to happen and then feel like it's naturally possible for us to keep going. And that's, in essence, what the goal is, you know, even though we were speaking Icelandic to each other, it wasn't mandatory for me to speak Icelandic to everybody else. So I would at times, but if I, at any point felt uncomfortable, I did sometimes fall back, or often fall back on English if I needed to. And that's where I want to really break the barrier. And that's what I'm planning on breaking the barrier with, is just allowing myself to feel much better at having conversations, because I can often start in Icelandic and then at some point it gets more complicated and I feel like I need to, like, you know, feel as if I can still be in the conversation and it ends up being a default into English. So I do hope though that this video is helpful to those who are learning a language, whether it's Icelandic or anything else. You know, this is a part of our lives that I feel is important, and I know Gunnar wants to always support me. And I know, I mean, do you feel like it's important for me to learn Icelandic? I've never actually even asked you
that. Because you want to, yes. Otherwise, I would have probably figured out a way for it not to be important. But yeah, it's a big deal of living here, I think, and a big part of living here. And also, if we want to have a family, then
yeah,
that would be a bit lonely, I think, not being included in those conversations.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't have any judgment for people who have families in Iceland and maybe their children speak it and they don't. That is, you know, everyone goes a different path when it comes to learning. I think for us though, at least for me, you know, with us having a family, it would feel kind of hard for my kid to be able to express themselves in a language that I don't understand, you know? Or I could advocate on their behalf, for instance, if something were to come up and it was in an environment where Icelandic is spoken the majority, like at school or something. So these things are just in that way important to me, but just personally, whether there's another human being brought into the situation or not, it's always something that in the back of my head has been a priority that I'm trying to always push forward. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you like hearing these types of perspectives from me or from us in regards to the language learning journey, definitely make sure to subscribe. I do want to talk more about this journey and also resources. And I have, if for people who are learning Icelandic, in the description box below, I have a link to a group on Facebook, actually 2 groups that are super helpful. And there are a lot of resources there because a lot of people often ask me about resources to learn Icelandic. And I think having a community is so important. And Facebook is a great place for that. I mean, it can have its faults in different areas, but when it comes to at least Icelandic learning, there's a lot of resources in these groups and people are so helpful when you have questions or whatever else. So definitely check that out. Thank you so much for coming on and helping to give some perspective to this. And I know a lot of people like seeing you on camera, so you got your little dose of Gunnar for a little while. Hopefully we'll hold you over to the next time. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.